Hello again. When somebody is obsessed with one particular subject, that person will usually be able to bring any conversation around until it revolves around his pet topic. Sometimes this can be sport or football or some political aspect. We all know the bore who is only interested in the class struggle, the person who worries obsessively about the environment, the crank who blames the machinations of the wicked Jews for all the world's ills. So it is with the race grifters, those who make a living from exposing and uncovering racism in all its manifestations. They are quite capable of making literally everything about people of colour and their tribulations. Now, on the face of it, you would have thought that the war in Ukraine would not be very promising and fertile ground for such crackpots, but you would be quite wrong. I mean, let's face it, this is a white European country being invaded by an entirely white nation which straddles Europe and Asia. The only racial aspect of the thing might possibly be the Pan-Slav movement, the ideology to which Vladimir Putin subscribes, but this has no reference at all to Africans, Indians or Arabs, eh? If you thought that way, you would greatly underestimate those who have made their careers out of racism. And if you thought that black people could not become the focus of this war, well, I'm sure that some of us have already spotted that is indeed becoming the case. Take the evacuation of refugees from Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainians and their neighbours have a more traditional and I would say praiseworthy attitude when it comes to rescuing people from danger. Perhaps older British people might remember things like the Birkenhead drill. Does women and children first when a ship is sinking and there's movement to the lifeboats ring any bells? Of course, with modern sexual equality, we in the West have long abandoned such old-fashioned and sexist ideas as allowing women to safety before men. But this is still the rule in some parts of the world. So it is in the evacuation of refugees from Ukraine. Women and children first. Men are expected either to wait their turn or better still to take up arms and fight. Some groups of black Africans in the country, either students or refugees, did not wish to wait and began trying to push their way into the exodus of women and children. When they were rebuffed and sent to the back of the queue, guess what cry went up? Of course, racism. It will surprise nobody to hear that the BBC picked up on this and was soon claiming that the authorities in Ukraine and Poland were behaving in a racist way. Perhaps they were even institutionally racist. In the description to this video, I give links to a few pieces about this from the usual suspects, including, of course, the British newspaper The Guardian, which is capable of making anything about racism. Some commentators also drew attention to the fact that when Belarus began importing refugees from the Middle East and then shoving them across the border into Poland, that the Poles had objected and built barbed wire fences to stop this. Now look, they're accepting hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees with open arms. Is it because they're white Europeans? Well, there you are. That's racism right there. There are also murmurs about the fact that when 1 million people from the Middle East and Africa began marching through the Balkans towards Europe in 2015, this was widely described as a migrant crisis. Now the same number of Ukrainians are heading to European countries, and these countries are doing their best to help. More racism. Speaking for myself, I'm a little suspicious about some of the dark-skinned people heading west from Ukraine and trying to slip past borders along with the crowds of women and children fleeing the fighting. I think there's more to this than at first meets the eye. That, however, is probably best left to a separate video. In the meantime, I will repeat what I said at the beginning of this video, that I was counting the minutes since the war began to see how long it would take for liberals and left-wingers in Western Europe to decide that there was racism to be seen and to hunt out black people to photograph. This angle is accelerating, and we can expect to see an increasing number of images of black refugees attempting to cross European borders with no questions asked. The thumbnail to this video shows one of these images which are becoming increasingly popular